What I want to talk to you about today is technology and how it affects the safety professional. So there's a lot of technology out there. It's the fastest moving thing happening. It's never moved as fast as it has today, and this is the slowest it'll ever be. So the reason I created DoneSafe, and this is definitely not a sales pitch for DoneSafe, you've got plenty of time to meet with us as we go. But in terms of why I created DoneSafe, so I was a health and safety practitioner in mines and manufacturing. I worked for a company called OneSteel, and I was responsible for implementing the technology solution they used. I was super frustrated with what I saw on the market. It tended to be clunky, you tended not to be able to get any insights out of it, and you couldn't actually use it in the field very nicely. So I wanted to create something that made things really easy for everybody to get involved in. But also I wanted to make sure that we left, I guess, safety a better place from a technology standpoint. And one of the things that we've worked very hard to do is to, I guess, be kind of agnostic when we talk to people about what technology exists, and to give you a really clear understanding of where things are moving. So recently I was at a forum actually up on the Gold Coast, so not too far from here. It was the Gartner CIO conference, and there are about 1,800 CIOs, probably from a bunch of the organisations that are in this room today. Those CIOs were getting together to talk about the fastest moving challenges that are happening in their businesses from a technology standpoint and what the world is doing. And obviously the presentation from Disney, we saw a lot of technology there. There's a lot of technology in all of the functions that exist. The marketing team have got great marketing automation tools and great insights to understand what's happening. The HR function are implementing, incredible tools to deal with bullying and performance management and all those sorts of things. But in safety, a lot of companies are still kind of grasping paperless and going paperless. So, we have got a long way to go, and you'll see there's a lot of organisations here, a lot of vendors here that are working with you today that brought some really interesting technology. So make sure you stop by and spend some time. But in terms of what Gartner were looking at, well, there were 10, I guess, core trends that they were seeing for 2019. And what I want to do today is to kind of talk through each of those in a plain English way. I want to make sure I leave time for questions, because these sorts of questions are ones that you often you'll hear in your executive leadership team meetings. There'll be technologies that are sort of coming into your business, and you want to know how you can kind of I guess affect the safety profession with those. So the three core trends are intelligent, digital, and mesh. And within intelligent, the three core things were autonomous things, augmented analytics, and AI-driven development. Within digital twins, empowered edge, and immersive experience. And within mesh, there was blockchain and smart spaces. And the two core things that underlie all of those were digital ethics and privacy, which is massive for health and safety practitioners normally. And then quantum computing, which is a bit of an outlier, and we'll talk about that at the very end. Okay, autonomous things. So, when we think about autonomous things and AI, you often get the worst case scenario that's talked about. Maybe there won't be a need for safety professionals because there'll be no people doing work. But I think that's a very far off way if that's ever going to happen in the first place. But where does it impact today? And so it's really it's an evolution curve. It started off with very basic things like automation. So us as practitioners being able to train technology to do things, and the technology slowly learning from that to be able to then go out and obviously to make some decisions on its own. Where this goes over time is through machine learning. The machine eventually becomes able to make its own decisions from those learnings, and you end up with what we call full autonomy. And so full autonomy means that all of these great things that we've been teaching technology, perhaps we've been looking at all of our insights and some of our risk metrics that we've been reporting to the board for years. We've been looking at that data, and we've been suggesting to the machine that, maybe this is the right control measure to implement in this scenario, or maybe this is the right piece of training to send to somebody under another scenario. With full autonomy, the machine starts to make those decisions for itself based on the data that's being collected. And then the further evolution of this is probably a little deep tech, but it's called Hive Smart, where machines start basically working together to recommend solutions based on all of the various impacts. And so if you think about a manufacturing site, you might have your conveyor belt running with all the sensors feeding into your material system. It might be also sending some data from incidents that are happening. Maybe you have a 360 camera picking up a bunch of people's activity. All of that data is being crunched in real time, and the machine's then recommending insights to people that are interacting with that work environment. Just waiting for it to catch up. I know. We can't even get this right. We're talking about AI. All right, augmented analytics. Okay, so we've talked about AI and we've talked about teaching the machine so it can provide insights. Now the next stage is, I'm sure everybody in this room has got into spreadsheets at some stage in their career and has built a board safety report or a team safety report or whatever it might be. Now, obviously, we have business intelligence in place, which is kind of the next evolution of that curve. And organizations are investing more and more in corporate business intelligence solutions. The next step is augmented analytics. And so what this means is, again, using some of that automation and analytics that's happening from an AI point of view, you're actually able to programmatically start gathering insights from all of that content, okay? And so what this does is it improves decision-making in real time. So again, if you think about an employee who's potentially walking out to site to do a traditional risk assessment or a task-based assessment before they start a job, rather than just filling in a checklist and maybe putting in some actions in place, as they're completing those activities, because of all the insights that have been gathered, the system's automatically starting to recommend to that end user the safety controls they should put into place. This allows workers to have just-in-time information. So, at the higher end, the board can get information in real time and can know what they need to do and the decisions they need to make to direct the company. But for an end user, it's able to keep them safer by giving them, detailed and, prescriptive information that they can work with before they start a task. AI-driven development. Who here has ever written any software? Just show of hands. Has anyone ever done any coding? Got a few people. Great. Okay. For those who haven't, it's pretty scary thinking about building software. Okay. So, but the future role of everybody in every business will actually be a developer. So, the safety profession, you will all become coders in your own right. But that doesn't mean you need to go out and learn a programming language. Okay. AI-driven development actually enables you to, using voice or using drag and drop elements or whatever it may be, to very quickly create proofs of concept that you can then deploy out to an organization in what we call a minimum viable product, get feedback immediately, and then make changes in real time. So gone are the days of working with a software vendor to spend a year building some piece of software that you deploy and everyone hates. You can now basically work on things in real time, get real-time feedback, and then that enables you to obviously iterate and get better with those sorts of things. But then tying it in with all of the other pieces I've already talked about, automation and AI, and also obviously the analytics components, to plug all of that together to get a complete solution. Digital twins. So obviously not Arnie and Danny DeVito. Very, very good-looking twins they were. Digital twins is the ability to create simulations and scenarios in real time, okay? So if you think about some of the horrible disasters that we've been witness to as safety professionals, the likes of Bhopal, and there's been some hideous, widespread decimation from safety and from an environmental point of view. What a digital twin allows you to do is to run real-time simulations in a near environment to the environment that you normally operate in. And so if you think about, high process, high risk type environments, the ability to see various scenarios, various controls being implemented, and then to test that in a digital environment, as opposed to obviously testing it in real time and seeing the ramifications, has massive benefits for the safety community. There's great examples here of some of the early stages of this in the VR and AR space. So if you look at training individuals or toolbox talks or incident investigation, typically today when these happen, they're done using e-learning, or they're done using face-to-face training, or it's done through having a toolbox talk on site where everyone stands around a piece of equipment or whatever it might be. Imagine if you could stick a VR headset on and you could actually see the environment, you could communicate with each other, you could annotate, and you could capture data that then could be mined for analytics without ever stepping foot into that dangerous situation. So from a training point of view for new people joining work sites, whether it might be for new people who are new to a particular area, or whether it's just for day-to-day communication, those sorts of technologies can really help. All right, a quick sip of water. Okay, empowered edge. So all that's great, okay? All these things are really, really practical things you can put into your business today to obviously give you a technological advantage. But without, obviously high-speed internet being available to your device, a lot of this can't happen, okay? And so what the empowered edge is the ability for data analytics and for activities to happen in the device that you're holding in your hands, using high-speed internet, obviously, to get results very quickly. So you will have heard of 5G being implemented, for example, in Australia. So 5G has made the NBN obviously irrelevant. It's basically the fastest internet that we've ever seen. And so with 5G's deployment and also the increase in complexity and intelligence in smartphones and devices, IoT devices that we're wearing, you've really got the ability to do a hell of a lot of crunching at the point. And so if you think about simple cases, things like hot work, where somebody would be inducted in to do hot work, they'd have a certification, they'd have a permit, they'd be carrying out the activity. It's a pretty high risky activity, especially when you're also dealing with confined spaces and a bunch of other things. But if you've got IoT devices that are connected to your personal device that can make millisecond calculations, it gives you that ability for that end user to, again, get real-time insights. No, maybe this isn't the safest thing to be doing. I need to be doing something different. Immersive experience. Okay, so we already talked a little bit about this in terms of virtual reality and augmented reality. So today, virtual reality is definitely no longer a buzzword. Okay, so virtual reality kind of popped its head up in the 90s originally, and you'd go into, I don't know if anyone went to Sega World or anywhere like that in Sydney. You'd put a VR headset on, you'd see a bunch of blocky animations, and that was kind of your VR experience. Where virtual reality and augmented reality come into play from a health and safety point of view is the ability, again, to utilize some of those tools I talked about earlier, like digital twins, and to actually dive into those and be in first person. So the ability to jump in and actually see the environment, work with the environment, interact with the environment without ever having to put yourself in harm's way. That's kind of where we're at now. And obviously there's a bunch of players in that space. Again, you've got C-Pilot locally here that have done some work in that area. You then move into augmented reality. And so augmented reality is basically the ability to have things happen in the natural environment without you having to obviously step into a fully immersive experience. So I don't know if anyone played Pokemon Go. I don't know if anyone would admit to that. No, good. Maybe your kids. I did play Pokemon Go, and I did enjoy catching Pokemon on the bus. But basically, augmented reality allows you to see objects in front of you using whichever device you can get access to. And so one of the cool ones that I've seen out of the Valley is actually safety glasses that enable you through object recognition to actually see some of the hazards as you're interacting within a work environment. And then using some of those other technologies that we talked about, machine learning and artificial intelligence, to mine that data and constantly improve. Okay? Blockchain, my favorite. This is not Bitcoin, okay? I'm not talking to you about Bitcoin today. I don't want to sell you on the latest Bitcoin scam, I promise. Blockchain is the underlying technology behind all of the hype of Bitcoin and Ethereum, okay? Everyone would have heard of blockchain by now. I don't think this would be a new concept for anyone. But blockchain as an actual concept, what it has impacts for the safety profession is really on verification, testing, certification, auditing, okay? So the ability to basically use decentralized verification. So everybody in this room could be part of a blockchain, effectively. And the core knowledge of all of the people in this room could be part of the verification process to say something is safe, all right? That's a really sort of simple example of how blockchain could potentially be utilized. Smart spaces, okay. So again, why do I have a tinfoil hat person up as my slide picture here? It's because we're finally interacting with satellites as people. So the tinfoil hat people were right. We are working with satellites more and more, okay? Now, satellites used to be, big devices, cost millions and millions of dollars and be super expensive to get up into space. They're now smaller than a toaster. They can be 3D printed. They can be shipped with a hot air balloon. And you can basically have your own personal satellite for your business. There's a number of companies, one in South Australia called Fleet, that are building satellites for enterprises to enable them to interact with their own IoT devices, okay? Now, so what does that mean? Well, what that means is that you can now as a business have satellites used for your own safety. You could potentially plug them in to identify with IoT devices, wearables, for example, to know who's on location and potentially how they're interacting with their work site. Simple examples are, and from a mining background, one of our biggest risks was people and heavy vehicle interaction on roads and walkways. And the worst near misses that I ever saw and some of the worst injuries I ever saw were where a truck would either collide with a light vehicle or interact with a person. And so imagine, obviously being able to know where every single person is on your site, where every single vehicle, where every single truck, and being able to alert those individuals of people's presence. I think that's going to be one of the most powerful uses of this technology. Of course, underpinning all of this is digital ethics and privacy, okay? It's terrifying. I tell you what, as a tech company CEO, this is the thing that keeps me awake, is the data that we obviously collect and collate, ensuring we keep it safe for all of you and for all of your customers. It's the most important thing for us, but it's also one of the most important things for you, I'm sure, okay? And so traditionally, if you think, especially if you're global organizations or you're working with global teams, understanding the geographical risks around dealing with employee data, things like GDPR, for example. Gone are the days where you can have a filing cabinet full of an injured person's details that is unlocked and open access, okay? So obviously thinking through, no matter what technology solutions you choose, thinking through the ramifications from a digital ethics and privacy point of view is obviously an imperative. And always thinking about the ethical nature of this data as well. What am I using this for? Am I using this to help me with my transformation program and potentially to let some people go? Or am I using this to really keep people safe? So thinking through how you're using these data, how you're keeping this data, and what you're doing with it. Quantum computing. I still remember as a kid watching Beyond 2000, and they were talking about quantum computing was going to be the next thing. Like, I'm talking imminent, okay? It's kind of getting there, all right? And so what quantum computing is it's basically just incredible horsepower for crunching data effectively in real time. So if you imagine all of the knowledge in everybody's heads here and all of your entire organizations around health and safety, being able to run scenarios or tests against that entire data and having millisecond level response, that's the type of power that we're talking about. And IBM is doing incredible work here, and we've been doing some work with IBM on that in terms of how we can crunch data more quickly and provide results. But this is going to be something that is not going to be, we're not going to be talking about beyond 2030. This is something in this decade that will be happening, and it's already happening this year. So quantum computing is definitely something to check out.